You think taxes are simple: income tax, sales tax, maybe property tax. You see the deductions on your paycheck, you pay at the register, and you assume that's it. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Those visible taxes are just the tip of the iceberg. The real taxation happens in ways you never see, never vote on, and barely understand. And by the time you realize what's happening, your purchasing power has already been drained. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is how the system works. And if you don't see the trap, you'll live inside it without even realizing you're in chains. Let me show you 10 ways governments extract wealth from you without ever calling it a tax. The first and most insidious is inflation. Governments love to tell you that inflation is just a natural economic phenomenon: rising prices, cost of living adjustments, market forces. But here's what they won't tell you. Inflation is a hidden tax, and it's one of the most effective wealth transfer mechanisms ever invented. Think about it. When a government prints money, it doesn't create wealth. It dilutes the value of every dollar, euro, or ruble already in circulation. Your savings account doesn't shrink in number, but it shrinks in power. What you could buy for $100 20 years ago now costs $600. That's not progress. That's theft by devaluation. And who benefits? The government and those closest to the money printer: banks, financial institutions, government contractors. They spend the new money first, before prices rise. By the time that money trickles down to you through wages and paychecks, prices have already adjusted upward. You get it last, after your wages have already lost value. This isn't accidental. It's designed to keep you running on a treadmill, working harder just to stay in place. The mechanism is elegant in its cruelty. The government borrows money by issuing bonds. The central bank buys those bonds with newly created money. The government spends that money on programs, contracts, and salaries. By the time you see any benefit, the value has already been extracted. Your labor subsidizes the system, and your savings pay the bill. History proves this pattern. In ancient Rome, emperors debased their currency by reducing the silver content in coins. Under Emperor Nero, the denarius went from nearly pure silver to 50% copper. By the 3rd century, it was barely 5% silver. They needed to fund wars, pay soldiers, and maintain the empire, but they didn't want to raise visible taxes, so they diluted the money supply. The result? Hyperinflation, collapse, and chaos. The soldiers were paid in coins that could barely buy bread. Merchants refused to accept currency. The economy reverted to barter. Sound familiar? Fast forward to Weimar Germany in the 1920s. The government printed money to pay war reparations demanded by the Treaty of Versailles. At first it seemed manageable, but the printing accelerated. Prices doubled every few days, then every few hours. A loaf of bread that cost 200 marks in January 1923 cost 200 billion marks by November. People carried wheelbarrows of cash just to buy groceries. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day, so they could spend money before it lost value. Life savings became worthless overnight. Pensions evaporated. The middle class was destroyed. This wasn't a random crisis. It was monetary policy gone mad. And here's the terrifying part. The government knew what it was doing. They chose inflation over default. They chose to destroy the currency rather than admit they couldn't pay their debts. And the people paid the price. And today, central banks call it quantitative easing, stimulus packages, liquidity injections. But strip away the jargon, and it's the same old trick. Printing money, devaluing your savings, and calling it economic policy. Your money in the bank is not a treasure chest. It's a loan you gave to an institution that can decide not to give it back. Inflation is not a bug in the system. It's a feature, and you're paying for it every single day. The second hidden tax is currency devaluation. This is inflation's cousin, but it operates on a global scale. When a government deliberately weakens its currency to boost exports or reduce debt, you pay the price. Let's say your country devalues its currency by 20%. Great for exporters, terrible for you. Imported goods become more expensive. Your savings lose value against foreign currencies. If you're planning to travel, study abroad, or buy anything made overseas, you just got poorer. And you never voted for this. You never agreed to it. It just happened. China has been accused of manipulating its currency for decades. By keeping the yuan artificially low, Chinese goods flood the world at unbeatable prices. But here's the paradox. This makes life cheaper for consumers in other countries, but it devastates local industries. Jobs disappear, entire sectors collapse, and governments respond by devaluing their own currencies in a race to the bottom. Who wins in this race? Not you. The workers lose jobs. The savers lose value. The only winners are the central planners who believe they can engineer prosperity by destroying the value of money. This is not a neutral policy. It's a hidden extraction of wealth from those who save and work, transferred to those who borrow and spend. The third hidden tax is bracket creep. This one is particularly sneaky because it pretends to help you while quietly robbing you. Here's how it works. Let's say you get a raise. Your salary goes up by 3%. Congratulations. But inflation is also 3%, so your real purchasing power hasn't changed. Worse, your nominal income has pushed you into a higher tax bracket, so now you're paying more in taxes even though you're not actually richer. Governments rarely adjust tax brackets for inflation. Why would they? It's an automatic revenue increase without passing a new law. You think you're moving up, but the system is designed to keep you in place while extracting more from you every year. And most people don't notice. They see a bigger paycheck and feel progress. But after taxes, after inflation, they're running harder just to stand still. This is not accidental. This is fiscal policy by stealth. The fourth hidden tax is fees and fines. Governments have become experts at extracting revenue without calling it a tax. Parking tickets, permit fees, licensing costs, inspection charges, tolls, surcharges, late payment penalties, processing fees, administrative charges, court costs, renewal fees. These aren't taxes, they tell you. They're user fees. They're penalties for breaking rules. They're administrative costs. They're necessary for public services. But add them all up, and they're a significant drain on your income. And unlike taxes, there's no representation, no vote, no debate, no legislative process, just bureaucrats setting prices and enforcing compliance. You can't vote them out. You can't challenge the fees without hiring lawyers. You just pay. In some cities, traffic cameras generate millions in revenue every year. Chicago made over $100 million from red light and speed cameras in a single year. Is that about safety? Or is it about funding? When a city depends on ticket revenue to balance its budget, enforcement becomes predatory. The goal is not to stop bad behavior. The goal is to extract money. And here's the twisted incentive. The more violations, the more revenue. So, what do cities do? They shorten yellow light times. They place cameras in spots designed to catch people, not to improve safety. They set speed limits artificially low. This isn't about protecting citizens. It's about generating cash flow. And if you can't pay, interest piles up. Collections agencies get involved, your credit score drops, your license gets suspended. What started as a $50 fine becomes $500 in penalties and legal fees. And if you still can't pay, jail time. You can literally be imprisoned for being too poor to pay a parking ticket. This isn't justice. This is a revenue machine that criminalizes poverty. The fifth hidden tax is regulatory compliance costs. This one doesn't come directly from the government, but make no mistake, the government created it. Every new regulation imposes costs on businesses, compliance departments, legal reviews, reporting requirements, audits, certifications. These costs don't disappear. They get passed on to you in the form of higher prices. Think about it. When the government mandates new safety standards, who pays for the retooling of factories? When new environmental regulations require expensive upgrades, who foots the bill? Not the government. You do, through higher costs for goods and services. And here's the kicker. Big corporations can afford compliance. They have legal teams and lobbyists. Small businesses, they get crushed. Regulations become a barrier to entry, protecting incumbents and limiting competition. Fewer competitors mean higher prices, and you pay. This is a hidden tax disguised as public interest, and it's one of the reasons why everything keeps getting more expensive, even when wages stagnate. The sixth hidden tax is Social Security and pension schemes that don't deliver. You pay into the system your entire life. Every paycheck, money gets deducted. You're promised a secure retirement. You're told it's your safety net. You're guaranteed income when you can no longer work. But the reality is far different. Most government pension systems are underfunded. The money you contributed didn't go into an account with your name on it. It was spent immediately to pay current retirees. The system relies on future workers to pay for your benefits. This worked when demographics were favorable, more young workers than retirees. But demographics are shifting. Birth rates are falling, people are living longer, fewer workers, more retirees, longer retirement periods. The math doesn't work. In the United States, Social Security is projected to run out of reserves by 2033. That's less than 10 years away. When that happens, the system can only pay out what it takes in from current workers. That means an automatic cut of about 25% to all benefits. You paid in your entire life, and the return is a fraction of what was promised. In Europe, the situation is even worse. Many countries are already raising retirement ages. France tried to push it from 62 to 64, and people rioted in the streets. But the math is unavoidable. Governments made promises they can't keep. And when the system runs out of money, what happens? Benefits get cut. Retirement ages get pushed back. Taxes on current workers go up. The promises get quietly revised. You were promised security, but you get a fraction of what you paid in. And you have no recourse, no legal claim. The government can change the rules anytime it wants. This is not a pension. This is a Ponzi scheme. And unlike private fraud, this one is legal because the government runs it. Bernie Madoff went to prison for running a Ponzi scheme. But when the government does the exact same thing, it's called social insurance. The seventh hidden tax is the erosion of property rights through zoning and land use regulations. You think you own your property, but try building what you want on it. Try using it how you see fit. Zoning laws dictate what you can build, where you can build, and how you can use your land. Want to add a second unit to your property? Need a permit. Want to run a business from home? Check the zoning code. Want to expand? Environmental review required. Each of these restrictions reduces the value and utility of your property. And when property values are artificially constrained by regulation, you lose wealth. You can't sell for what the market would otherwise bear. You can't develop. You can't adapt. And the cost of compliance? Legal fees, application fees, delays, uncertainty. All of this drains wealth from property owners and transfers it to bureaucrats and connected insiders who know how to navigate the system. The eighth hidden tax is government monopolies on services. When the government controls a service and prohibits competition, you pay more and get less. Mail delivery, public transportation, water and sewage, education, healthcare in many countries. In many places, these are government monopolies. And what happens when there's no competition? No pressure to improve, no innovation, no efficiency, just rising costs and declining service. Take public education. In most places, you're assigned a school based on your address. You can't choose. You can't opt out without paying twice, once through taxes and again through private school tuition. The school has no incentive to perform because it gets funding regardless of results. Bad teachers can't be fired. Failing schools stay open for decades. And costs keep rising while outcomes stagnate or decline. Or consider the postal service. In many countries, it's a legal monopoly for certain types of mail. Private companies can't compete. So what happens? Inefficiency. Losses, slow service. And when the postal service loses money, which it often does, taxpayers cover the deficit. You're subsidizing a monopoly that you're forced to use. Public transportation? Often terrible service, unreliable schedules, and rising fares. But you have no alternative. You can't choose a better bus company. You can't opt for a different subway operator. You're locked into whatever the government offers, at whatever price it sets, with whatever quality it delivers. This is taxation by monopoly. You're forced to pay for a service you might not want, delivered at a price higher than a competitive market would charge, with quality lower than competition would allow. And when you complain, you're told it's for the public good. But whose good? Not yours. The ninth hidden tax is currency controls and capital restrictions. Governments don't like it when you try to protect your wealth by moving it out of their reach. When you try to escape their system, they make it illegal, so they impose capital controls, limits on how much money you can take out of the country. In China, citizens can only move $50,000 per year out of the country legally. Want to buy property overseas? Want to diversify into foreign assets? Too bad. Restrictions on foreign currency purchases, reporting requirements for international transfers, taxes on currency exchange, every transaction monitored, every movement tracked. Argentina has a long history of capital controls. Citizens are limited in how many dollars they can buy. The government sets an official exchange rate, but there's a black market rate that's often 50% higher. Why? Because people don't trust the peso. They want dollars. But the government won't let them have dollars because that would expose the weakness of their own currency. So they trap people inside a failing system. These controls trap your wealth inside the system. You can't diversify. You can't escape inflation or devaluation. You're forced to hold assets in a currency the government controls and can debase at will. Your wealth is held hostage. And if you try to move money anyway, penalties, investigations, seizures. In some countries, unauthorized currency transfers can land you in prison. Your wealth is not really yours. It's under the control of a government that can change the rules whenever it wants. You worked for it, you earned it, you saved it, but you don't control it. Capital controls are the financial version of a prison. The bars are invisible, but they're real, and they're there to keep you locked inside a system that's actively working against your interests. The 10th hidden tax is financial repression. This is when governments deliberately keep interest rates below the rate of inflation, thus forcing savers to lose money in real terms. You put money in a savings account. The bank pays you 1% interest, but inflation is 3%. You're losing 2% of your purchasing power every year. Over a decade, that's a 20% loss in real value. And this isn't accidental. This isn't market forces. Central banks set interest rates. They choose to keep them low to benefit borrowers, primarily governments drowning in debt. After the financial crisis of 2008, central banks around the world slashed interest rates to near zero. They kept them there for over a decade. Why? To make it cheap for governments to borrow, to inflate away debt, to punish savers and reward spenders. This is deliberate policy. In some countries, interest rates even went negative. You deposit money in a bank, and the bank charges you for holding it. This is insane. You're paying the bank to lend them your money, but it's the logical endpoint of financial repression. Who loses? Savers, retirees who depend on interest income, anyone trying to build wealth responsibly. Grandparents who saved their whole lives now earn nothing on their deposits while watching prices rise. Who wins? Governments and big borrowers who get to finance their debt at negative real interest rates. The United States government is paying less in real terms to service $30 trillion in debt than it did when the debt was $10 trillion. They've inflated away the burden. This is theft by policy. Your savings are being quietly confiscated through the interest rate mechanism. It's a transfer of wealth from responsible savers to irresponsible borrowers. And most people don't even realize it's happening. They see a positive number in their account and think they're safe. But in real terms, they're getting poorer every single day. So, what does all this mean for you? What should you do with this knowledge? First, understand that taxation is not just what you see on your paycheck. The real extraction happens in hidden ways, through mechanisms designed to be invisible and unaccountable. Inflation, devaluation, regulatory costs, fees, monopolies, capital controls, and financial repression are all forms of taxation. And they're all taking wealth from you every single day. When you add them up, the total tax burden is far higher than the official rate suggests. You might think you're paying 30% in taxes, but when you factor in inflation, hidden fees, and financial repression, the real rate might be 50% or more. Second, recognize that these systems are not broken. They're working exactly as designed. Governments need revenue. They need to fund programs, pay debts, and maintain power. But visible taxes are unpopular. People revolt over income tax increases. They vote out politicians who raise taxes openly. So governments have built a system of hidden extraction that most people never notice until it's too late. By the time you realize what's happening, your wealth has already been transferred. Third, protect yourself. Understand how these mechanisms work. Diversify your assets. Don't hold all your wealth in depreciating currency. Cash in a bank account is a melting ice cube. It shrinks in value every day. Invest in things that hold value when money loses it. Real assets, property, commodities, skills that can't be inflated away. Knowledge that gives you an edge. Mobility that lets you escape broken systems. Fourth, be aware that governments hate financial independence. When you're dependent on government services, government jobs, government benefits, you're easy to control. But when you're independent, when you have options, when you can leave, you're a threat to the system. That's why they make it hard to escape. Capital controls, exit taxes, reporting requirements, they want to keep you inside the cage. If you know these tricks, you're harder to manipulate. If you understand the traps, you can avoid becoming a victim. Financial education is not just about getting rich. It's about resistance. It's about not letting the system drain you dry while you work yourself to exhaustion. History doesn't repeat exactly, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you just the same as everyone else. Governments have been extracting wealth through hidden means for thousands of years. The methods change, the names change, but the pattern is always the same. Money and power always go hand in hand. The system can survive poverty, but it cannot survive corruption. And when the extraction becomes too obvious, when the theft becomes too blatant, the whole structure collapses. Rome fell. Weimar collapsed. Every empire that debased its currency and overtaxed its people eventually crumbled. We're living through the greatest financial experiment in human history. Fiat currencies backed by nothing. Debt levels that can never be repaid. Central banks printing money with no end in sight. And most people don't even realize they're part of the experiment. But now you know. And knowledge is the first step to protection. The traps are everywhere. But if you see them, you can navigate around them. The system is designed to keep you poor, but understanding the design gives you power. So pay attention, question the narratives, follow the money, and remember, if something feels like theft, it probably is, even if they call it policy.